Hello and welcome to breadboards. Breadboards are very useful. They are the things that we will be using to prototype all of the circuits that we'll be using in our projects. And today we're just going to talk about how that thing works. So this is the breadboard. As mentioned in the previous video, they can come in different sizes. They can come with or without these rails on the side. So if you see these stripes, these are called rails. We'll talk about those in a sec. This is just a shorter one. This is one without rails. It's a little tiny. Breadboards, funny story. Breadboards actually did used to be made on breadboards. That's wild, right? This is before we had these kind of fancy things. And yeah, so fun story. One of the first things I like to do when I think about breadboards, inside a breadboard, what does breadboard actually look like underneath? So if you go to the images, this is actually what is going on inside a breadboard. Fun story, Spark Fun, great website. On the inside of a breadboard, this is what's happening. So they're showing an example of a kind of small one, like what I have. And so what is going on inside of that? Well, below these little holes are metal strips that are connecting across horizontally. And so when you plug something into one of the holes in a row, anything else you have plugged into that row will be connected to it. In the more complicated breadboards, you have these things called power rails running down the sides. So in the center, you have that same thing. So these in the middle are connected short ways. So typically you kind of look at it like this. So they're connected horizontally. You'll notice that they have numbers. So like row 35. Everything in row 35 is connected on this side. Then there's a break, and then there are more connections on 35. And you can see that there's a break because there's like a little bit on this side, a little bit on that side. And then on the sides are the power rails. So you'll notice here that the power rails have a little plus and minus. They're the same, but they're labeled positive and negative to help you keep track of what you have plugged in there. So I just, as a matter of keeping my brain on straight, like to plug power things on the plus side and ground things on the minus side, just because they're labeled that way, so it helps me. So that is how it is connected. So you can always kind of remember this visual of these like long ones running down the sides and short ones perpendicular with a break in the middle. And essentially just anything you plug into one of the rows or one of the rails is plugged into everything else in that row or rail. So that's what's going on. Now, yeah, so that's how breadboard works. Not too bad. One of the biggest things that I kind of see as far as mistakes when first starting to use a breadboard is thinking that these are connected the other way, like long ways. And so they'll plug something into like this one and then something into like that one and think that they're connected, and no, so they're connected short ways. So try to just remember this picture and think about how there's like just these little ones running that way below the surface. And okay, so let's actually make a circuit. So I looked up Arduino LED circuit, and if you're finding these on the Arduino website, typically they're pretty good. You do have to be a little careful. We'll talk about how this one has this one little piece. It's like, why? But so what we're seeing here is that in order to plug in an LED to pin 13, we need to have 2 wires, an LED, and a resistor. So I actually have these already here. So I've got a big long black wire for the ground wire. I like to color code. Black is always ground. And then I have a yellow wire for the wire that's going to go to pin 13. Got our LED here. One important thing to notice about an LED, that one leg is slightly longer than the other leg. And then I have a resistor. This is a 330 ohm resistor, and we will talk a little bit later about how to tell about resistors and how to, if you're not sure what they are, how to either look up the color code or use the multimeter. But just for now, this is a 330. It's one of the common values. 330 and 10K are the big ones that you'll use. And so going back to that diagram, so we have an LED plugged in. We've got one leg is going to ground and the other leg is going to pin 13 through the resistor. And notice that on that side in the diagram, it looks like that's the side that the LED's leg is longer on. So the short leg goes to ground and the long leg goes to pin 13. So let's try it out. So let's get that LED plugged in first. So remember, we got one leg that is a little bit longer, and so I'm going to put that kind of oriented in the same way as the diagram. So we'll just put our LED just in there, like so. And then looking at that diagram, the long leg of the LED is going into one of the legs of the resistor. Now, it has this little wire in between them, but if I just put the long leg in the same row as the one leg of the resistor, like, why do I need that wire? It's kind of a waste. So I'm just going to put the one leg of the resistor and the long leg of the LED into the same row. Unlike LEDs, resistors can be plugged in either direction, so don't worry too much about which leg is which. So I'm going to put one leg in here and one leg just in a different row. Sometimes things are a little bit hard to plug in, so there we go. So notice one leg of my resistor is in the same row as one leg of my LED. And then we want the leg of the LED to go to ground. So same row as the leg, I'm going to plug in the wire, and I'm going to send it over to ground. There we go. Oh, you know what I should do? Is unplug your Arduino when you are plugging things into it, because you don't want power to hit something by accident before you're finished. So, okay, so I got that wire plugged into the same row as the leg of the LED. And now into the other side, the side that the other leg of the resistor is plugged into, I'm going to get that yellow wire and I'm going to send that to pin 13. Okay, so a little bit different than the diagram. I'm using the ground over here as opposed to the ground over here. But if you remember, all these grounds go to the same place. It does not matter which one you use. So I've got them all plugged in, and now I can plug my Arduino back into my computer. And what we should see is that pin 13, because pin 13 was already turning on and off to turn on the built-in LED. But if I plug into pin 13 here, it sends power to my LED. So we have a really beautiful LED circuit. Okay. Next up, we'll plug in a button.